Hello, dear book dragons. It's Matilda here, and it's March, and I finished 8 books in February, and I wanted to talk about them, tell you what I've been reading. And I started February with reading Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and after that, Emily's Wild Map of the Adderlands that just came out. And I don't actually have the physical books here because I've lent them out, but I'll just show you the cover of the beautiful second book because I'm keeping the covers so they don't get destroyed. And I probably talked about the first book. Yes, I have, because it was on my videos of no, I've talked about this one. Talking about the books I got for my birthday, yes. But Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies we read in my and Krista's book club together, and it was really. I was second time I read it, and it was nice to read it with other people and hear other people's thoughts about it. And I think most people enjoyed it, but we also have some critical points. I mean, it's set in a kind of magical part of Norway, because it's this area, Jusland, there is actually a part in Norway called Jusland, but that's in the south of Norway and on the mainland. But in the book, everything happens on an island in the north of Norway, so it's not the real Jusland. So it's like a kind of like a Svalbard, but not really, because there is a forest there. I don't think there are any trees on Svalbard, if I think correctly. And it's about Emily Wilde, who is a researcher, and she researches about fairies, and she's quite a special woman, and she's very funny. It is a very funny, light-hearted book, but also very adventurous, and sometimes a little bit creepy, but it's never too creepy. I think now the second time I didn't feel creepy at all, because I knew what was going to happen. But the first time I remember I was creeped out by this child who was switched out, abducted, changeling. And I think it's just like the first book is really cozy, because when she goes to Jusland to study their fairies, she's not very good at being social, but and after a while her colleague shows up, and it's quite clear that he really likes her, but behaves quite strangely, which also was talked about in the group, that he wasn't behaving very well. I mean, because he was with other women, but he loves her. Yeah, that is weird. Yeah. But I shouldn't talk too much about it if you haven't read it, but I would say it's very light-hearted and sweet, and their banter is just so fun, because she's kind of immune to his charm, but in the same way she's not, and she writes in a diary, because we get to read her book through the diary. It's quite clear that she does like him, but she's quite annoyed about liking him, which is really fun, actually. And and I think that's one of the reasons he likes her, that she doesn't fall for his charm and just swoon like everyone else. And of course that's more interesting. And the second book, I would say, is more adventurous. It's not as cozy, because in the first book she gets to know the villagers, and feels like she gets friends for the first time in her life. And even if she talks about these people in the second book, we actually don't get to meet them. So it's more adventurous, it's more scary, fairy-like creatures, but not too scary either. They're lighthearted and they're really interesting. And in the second book, we get to go into fairy land, you could say. Yeah, so I highly recommend them. And I'm really looking forward to the third book. That will be very interesting. It's okay, I can't say too much about the second book, but it's good. I like it. I think I like the first book better, but I really like the second book as well. And then I read Half a Soul, which I also read for a book club. And I must say I was really surprised by this book because it's a very sweet, light-hearted, and focused on love story, but it's also very what's it called? Criticizing. It's really criticizing the society. This is set in England in the late 1800s, I guess. I don't know exactly the year. I've forgotten that, but it is the Regency time, and it's been a war, Napoleon. And yeah, I don't want to tell you too much, but I really was surprised and glad that the author and one of the people you meet in here is really criticizing how poor the poor are and how the rich are so rich and they don't care about the poor, and they pretend that they do, or they give some money away, but they don't. Yeah, I mean, they don't have the system we have to do. Some of our countries have systems of taxes and helping each other out. And yeah, so, and I don't have the quotes here because I did take some photos of some of the quotes in the book that was really good about how humans are kind of worse than fairies, because fairies can't lie, and I mean, but they're cruel, but they don't really know that they're cruel, while humans know they're cruel. So that was an interesting aspect, interesting change, interesting. I don't find the word. The difference between fairies and humans. So in that way, humans are worse because we know when we're cruel, while the fairies don't. So that I thought that was really good, interesting, and it's also a very cute romance, and not just one romance. It's several people. So I really highly recommend this one, and I'm really looking forward to read more books of her. I know it's like it kind of is like a series, but not, because the next book is not really about Theodora. Yeah, I haven't really told you what this is about. This is our main girl, Theodora. She loses half her soul in the beginning of the book to a fairy who demands it. She says her mother gave it away. Her mother is dead, so I mean, we can't really say. She's grown up with her cousin and her cousin's parents, and it's also quite cruel because her cousin's parents are, especially the mother, is not very nice to Dora at all, because she's afraid that because she lost half her soul and she's not socialized, she's doesn't know how to behave in the proper English way. She's afraid she will destroy her cousin's marriage proposals, kind of. Yeah, so it's quite shocking sometimes how horrible that woman is to Dora, because even if she only has half her soul, she of course has feelings. She has half her feelings, and she's very wise, I would say, and she's very cool because the other half is her more emotional half. So she's very, yeah, she's not afraid of things. Yeah. So this was a 5-star read for me, and the other ones were also a 5-star read for me. And I'll go on. Next, I read a Japanese book. What You Are Looking For is in the library. And was for a book club that I'm in. And I thought this was really sweet. Very different from the others, so that was good. I like to mix what I read. and so it doesn't get too similar. And this is like a collection of stories, you could say. So it's like maybe it's 4 or 5 different people that we meet that live in the same area, and they all are kind of lost in different ways, and they all in some way get directed to the library in the area where they live, in this community. So it's a lot about the community and how when they go to the library they meet the librarian, who is very special. And she gives them directions on what books to read, and because she always asks for something special, so she gives them about that, but she also gives them another book to read which has nothing to do with what they asked for, but they all lend that book, borrow that book, and it helps them on their way in life to get a more fulfilling, happy life. I think it's really sweet. It's not repetitive, I wouldn't say. I mean, even it's the same kind of stories in that way, that they all are kind of lost in different ways, and they go to the library. I feel they're quite different kind of people and different ways of life. So, and even if there is a cat here, it's not really a Japanese cat book. I was a little bit sad about that. I mean, we do meet cats, but it's only in one of the stories, I think. So yeah, highly recommend that one. And then I read something totally different, and that's House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas, the third book in her Midgard series about Bryce Quinlan. This is very fast fantasy, you could say. This is the third book. I can't really say so much about it. I was really anticipating this book, and I was a little bit disappointed about some things. I was hoping for more about some certain people we meet. I know I sound very cryptic now, but I don't want to spoil anything. Well, I am now, aren't I? But I mean, I still gave it like a 4.5 stars. But maybe like afterwards, I'm always really happy about it when I read it, and then afterwards, maybe when I think a bit more, and I hear what other people think, I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. I think Bryce was quite rude to her man, and which was really strange. But it was a lot of action and very interesting world. Yeah, I really like her books, and I'm looking forward to read. Apparently, this is not the last one. I thought this was going to be the last one. It could be the last one, but she's going to write more in this world, I've heard. I don't know why. I thought it was quite a good wrap up in the end. It was a really fun ending. I can't say why. Well, and you can see it's really thick. Anyway, after that, I finished up Jane Eyre, which I've been reading since the beginning of January for a book club, and I've been reading this as my lunch book at work, so that's why it's taking such a long time, because it's not a really thick book, but I've been reading like 20 minutes 4 times a week or something like that. So yeah, it took some time, which I think is kind of good with this kind of classic books, because if I would read a classic at home, I might get like bored and think, oh, but I want to read some fantasy. So this is a good way for me to read these books. And it's quite a tough book to read. It's beautiful language. I really like reading about Jane Eyre's childhood, which is really dark. It's a sad story. And I read this in school, so maybe 30 years ago. Yeah, I'm that old. And it is a good book, but I was so annoyed at several people, mostly Mr. Rochester, the man of her life, and yeah, because I can't really see why she falls in love with him. He is so annoying and condescending and talks to her like she's my little doll, my little yeah. He talks to her like a third person a lot of the time. So I don't understand why she falls for him, and she's kind of annoying too sometimes because. But you understand why she is annoying because she's had such a rough childhood, and she's a woman and she's grown up in England where you're supposed to show nothing, tell nothing, and that is devastating to read. She kind of destroys herself when she doesn't show her feelings, when she doesn't say what she wants. She just closes in everything and thinking, well, he doesn't want to see me cry, so I won't cry. And oh, that really annoyed me. She's very strong and she's goes her own way, and then that way is really groundbreaking for this time, of course. So and beautiful language. So I have so many different feelings about this book. It's really good. It's so annoying, and I mean, I found it annoying because it's so well written, right? I mean, if it's read someone writing like this but not writing so well, I wouldn't be so frustrated, right? I guess. So yeah, I have a lot of mixed feelings. I give this 4.8 stars because it is amazing, and I really like the ending. That was the first time they were nice to each other. And I really like the part when she, yeah, maybe shouldn't say that if you haven't read, but there are some nice sweet parts of this book where people are nice to her and she's nice to other people. I could say that. Yeah, this is a classic, really good classic, and I really like this Penguin English Library. It's yeah, Penguin English Library. It's so soft, and the paper is so soft, and it's like I could just sit and stroke it. So yeah, even if it's not a beautiful picture, I really prefer paperbacks actually for because it takes less space and it's yeah, it's cheaper than a binded book. Yeah, it's really nice. And then I read the last physical book that I read was Violeta by Isabel Allende, and this was the book of the month that I wrapped up, and so I didn't know what the book was. I just took it from the pile of the books that I wrapped up, and this was it. It's been standing in my bookshelf for I think 2-3 years, maybe. And this is a very special book. It's a history covering 100 years of Chile history from 1920 to 2020. So it starts with the Spanish flu and it ends with the COVID. It's not that the COVID is so important in this book, but so it's a story about Violeta's family, really. Even it's called Violeta and it's about her, but she's not the person you get to know best. And that's one of the reasons why the grade got down a bit for me, because she tells her family story. She tells us the story of Chile, which is really shocking to read. It's such a brutal political story. I mean, political history about what happens in Chile during these years. And so we get to know about that. We get to know her family. We get to know what she works. When she grows up, she's really spoiled as a child, but she gets the English a woman who kind of makes her a lady, you could say. And we get to know that. We get to know when she's grown up how she makes money, and she marries a man she doesn't really love but feels like she should, and then she meets a man who has a very passionate affair with, but he's a horrible human being, and she knows it, not from the beginning, but so it's a lot of abuse in this book, not just to her but also to her children. So it's a hard read and frustrating to read. We read so many books where women are abused and where the men are charming and horrible, and I'm kind of sick of that. But yeah, it was really interesting. The best part was reading about Chile, really, and how she described also the beauty of the country, and but also the shocking political parts, and not about just about how it was in Chile, but how CIA from USA, kind of America, made a lot of decisions. They wanted to keep it. Yeah, it's just crazy to read how the politics and money make such a difference in the world. It's sad to read. But yeah, I give this 4.2 stars. So it was good, but I would have liked more about her, and not just. I would have liked to know what she liked, not just what she worked with and her relationship with this horrible man. And the story she writes to her, that was my dinner. The story she writes to her grandchild. The story she writes is to her grandchild. So that's kind of an interesting point. I'll go to my next book because then I got to get my dinner out from the oven. So I also read an e-book called Wintering. Wintering, The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times by Katherine May, an English writer. And that was really interesting. It took me also a long time to read because it was interesting, but it wasn't captivating. It didn't catch me, oh, I have to finish this. Because it's not a story. It's about her life. It's about Katherine May, about her wintering, how her depressions, her problems in life, in different parts of life, and it was really interesting to read. Partly, I would say, but it was a little bit jumpy. I would have liked more chronological order of her life, but you have like different chapters focusing on different things, which was fine. And she writes a lot about the Nordic countries and our culture, about winter and ice and the snow and the cold, and so it was kind of interesting to read about my own culture, especially when she talked about Sankta Lucia, which is from Sweden, where I'm from, and so that was touching to read. And I think the most interesting thing I read was when she was interviewing this Danish woman who was bipolar and had a doctor. She got a new doctor who said, well, these medicines, they won't cure you, but they will help you. And when she realized that this is not a cure, this is just a help, she tried to find her own way to cure herself, heal herself. And that's why when she started to take cold baths, so and that really helped her. So yeah, it's a story about real people, about how different people coped with their winter, as she calls it, in different ways. So I would say, even it wasn't a gripping read, it was an important read, I would say. So that was the books I read in February. See you next month.